What if the biggest divide between Judaism and Christianity is not whether the Hebrew Bible has mysterious divine figures, but what we do with them once Christians say who that figure is? So we ask the question, does Judaism reject Christianity because of its theology, or do they reject the theology because it's Christian? We're going to talk about that and a little bit more on Mount Hermeneutics. So go ahead and keep it right here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck.
It's just a number. I mean, my doctor says I'm basically like 25. So
Is that what
That's your
your doctor said?
psychiatrist.
You're right. So if you listened to the show last week and you thought Brian was a bumbling idiot, now you know why. Now you know.
I kind of feel like that's fair. Like I kind of was a bumbling idiot.
Remember that Mount Hermeneutics is free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. And if you're seeing the video version of this, then it's YouTube. And just go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell and hit the thumbs up and leave a comment and all the things. And if it's your first time with us, I'm Andre, that's Matt, that's Brian. Fellas, what's happening?
All right. So it's good.
Man, I mean, it's so much has happened since last week. It's hard to sum up. My life is just the same as it always is. I work during the day.
Dope and you do dope stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. My life is dope and I do dope stuff. Dre, what's up with you, man?
I'm preparing to work Comic-Con.
It seems like you're always at a Comic-Con.
No, Comic-Con happens every July.
Is it just once a year?
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like you were.
Well,
just
I mean,
telling us
I
about
think there's
Comic-Con.
in other spot. I was at a WonderCon, which is like Timu
okay.
Comic-Con.
It's like when you
It's
go,
like
Mom, can we go to
great
Comic-Con?
value Comic-Con.
No, we have Comic-Con at home.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Why are we putting eggs in there? You make egg McMuffins. What's happening?
The magic is gone now that superheroes are the mainstream culture and not the counterculture. It's just kind of like I think the content itself has kind of lost the magic it used to have. But anyway, that could be a whole show that you guys wouldn't be interested in doing. But I'm gonna resist the urge to do that show right now. So
Okay.
just leave it at that.
Okay. So should we get into some rapid fire then?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go.
Lightning round.
Did early Christians invent Jesus' divinity, or did they inherit a Jewish category and apply it to Jesus?
The second one.
When the angel of the Lord speaks as God, is that just agency or something more?
Agency.
Like, is it just delegated authority, or is it or is that actually God? I think is what he's asking.
Right.
It's the second one. I would argue, but
Yeah, I mean, everything that I've read, everybody, there tends to be broad consensus that when the angel of the Lord does things, that is the pre-incarnated Christ.
Among Christians.
Well,
does
it'd be hard for non-Christians to think that was Christ. That would be weird.
Right.
Well, Jews, but we'll get into that.
Does Daniel 7 describe a human Messiah, a heavenly being, or a divine figure?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did rabbinic Judaism reject two powers in heaven because it's unbiblical, or because Christians claim Jesus was the second power?
Because of Christians.
Yeah. It's weird. I guess I'm gonna be taking up the Jewish side just for. I mean, not because I agree with them, but I just think I don't want to straw man them.
Wait, is the Trinity a break from Jewish monotheism or a Christian explanation of Jewish monotheism's mystery?
The second one.
I guess if you have to pick, yeah, I'd pick
I
the
feel like
second
these
one.
are rhetorical.
A little bit. When Jesus
Not if you were
says,
Jewish.
yeah.
Aha!
When Jesus says he's the Son of Man coming in the clouds, is that humility or divine claim?
It could be
Yes.
both.
I mean, not that Jesus isn't humble, but
I too am very humble.
I too am extraordinarily humble.
Were Jewish objections to Christianity mainly about theology or about identity and boundary marking after Christianity spread?
I mean, it's the latter attempting to be the former.
If Christians had never claimed Jesus fulfilled Daniel 7, would two powers readings have remained more acceptable in Judaism?
I don't see why they wouldn't have.
That's such a like I don't know. Yeah, I agree with Matt, but it's just like trying to do a hypothetical for like
What if?
for like
Yeah.
God's plan of history. But anyway, yeah.
I mean, okay.
I'm not faulting you. I'm just it was just breaking my brain a little bit.
If, um, does worshiping Jesus violate the Shema? Is it Shema?
The Shema.
The Shema? Or reveal a deeper meaning of the Shema?
It's that second one.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to get in there and interpret, right? Like,
Ooh, ooh.
Well, I'll let the Hebrew guy
I'm not a
speak to
Shema
that.
expert. Like, I can barely spell it.
Do you know the difference between Yaqid and Ikad?
This is not lightning round content.
Is Christianity
We'll get there.
rejected because it is bad Jewish theology, or is some Jewish theology rejected because it became Christian?
It's the second one
I
again.
think it's the latter again. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're done with lightning round.
All right.
All right. So, hey, Matt, why don't you bring us up to speed on
Yeah.
how this topic kind of came about for us?
Yeah, so we've touched on this briefly a couple of times in our shows, and it's been probably a very long time. Uh, we've never done a focused discussion on it, and I ran into this during my Hebrew class, uh, just natively, right? Like I was out just bouncing through the Old Testament, translating verses,
Just running these
and
streets.
yeah, doing what I do, just running around translating the Bible, the Tanakh, if you will, and it was over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, one of our sections in my class where they give us chunks of Bible verses to translate. We've been slowly uh, translating the entirety of the story of Abraham going up and God telling Abraham to sacrifice his son. And so that storyline, we translated the entire section of that. And when I hit the verse where the angel of the Lord was talking to Abraham, I was like, oh yeah, this is some of that two powers stuff going on. And then that just made me think about it. And I was like, oh, we haven't talked about this on the show in a while. We should bring this up. And, I've got I just bounced into it organically um, and we should talk about it. So it's Genesis 22, kind of Genesis, Exodus 22. I mean, I got me doing it. Genesis 22:10. Basically, Abraham is about to slaughter his son. He's reaching out with a knife. And then in 11, the angel of the Lord says, don't. Or actually, he just says, Abraham. And then Abraham's like, I'm here. Yeah. And and then so what happens is, so I'm going to read this, and I'm reading this. This is actually interlinear. So let me swap out of this because this is going to be terrible for me to read out loud to the. So the angel of the Lord says, don't lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God. And so that's the first kind of example of the two powers. So I guess back up just super high level, and Brian Dre, feel free to add some context. The phrasing two powers in heaven is kind of a doctrinal terminology to explain that early Hebrews had a very clear understanding that there were times in the Bible when God was doing something on earth but was still present in heaven. And so there was kind of I'm going to say this word because it's the only word that makes sense. And then Brian's going to be like, ah, it's not that. There was a duality of things going on where the angel of the Lord was acting. And as we said during lightning round, Christian scholars, at least specifically, are very comfortable with the broad opinion that when the angel of the Lord is discussed in the Old Testament, that was the pre-incarnated Christ. So if that was in fact the pre-incarnated Christ, when he talks about the Father or God or the Lord or Yahweh or whichever language he's using, he's talking about the other part of the Trinity or the other part of God. So there is something going on with multiple personalities of, or multiple persons of God. So anyway, so back to the verse, he says this. He says, "For now I know that you fear God, seeing that you've not withheld your son, your only son, from me." And that's the verse, and it's a really weird verse, right? And we see this in a couple of other places. I just, before the show started, I did a quick little, check and said, what are the high level verses in the Old Testament where two powers is evident? And the quick results gave me 10 different 10 different examples of within books, three specifically within Genesis, and then one in Zechariah, one in Psalm, one in Daniel, one, the multiples in Genesis, Exodus, the burning bush.
Right,
I think the
Exodus, yeah.
burning bush is probably the most common one that people would go to talk about this. And I know, Brian, that's why you thought I was going to be in Exodus, because you kind of jumped to the burning bush conversation. But this one's, to me, is actually stronger of two powers than the burning bush, because the burning bush is it's similar in the way it bounces back and forth. But I mean, just to read that again, he says, "Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son from me."
Yeah.
And this is, now I feel really comfortable with what that says because of what I've been doing and learning Hebrew and learning to translate. The Hebrew language is very clear that it says from me and it says God. This isn't like, an interpretation issue, or, well, you don't really understand what it says because the word this means that. Because very clearly, he says Elohim when he says, I know that you fear God, you fear Elohim, because you've not withheld your son from me. And that's very clearly there in the Hebrew. And I feel very comfortable saying that now that I
clearly
understand how to
speaking
read
of
it.
himself as God,
Right.
but he's speaking of God in the third person as well
At the same time. Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah.
So so again, anybody that's interested, Genesis 22:12, it's a short verse. You can, read the paragraph so you can kind of get context with what's going on there. But you all know that if you've read anything, if you have any Bible background, you know the story. Abraham was promised a son, and years went by and didn't happen. And then he finally had a son after having another son named Ishmael with his wife's handmaiden. Then God finally gives Sarah a son. And then a few years later, God's like, you know what? You need to sacrifice your son. And Abraham's like, what? And he's like, well, I guess we're going to load up and go out and we're going to go to this place. And him and his men, he takes men with him, and him and his son and his men, they travel off to this mountain. And God's like, that one. And the story is interesting because Abraham leaves his men down on the bottom of the mountain because probably his men would have
He's gonna be
intervened to
like,
stop
"What
him.
are you doing?
Right.
You
And
must be
just
outside your mind."
and just he and Isaac go up, and it's also interesting to note that Isaac carries the wood that he's about to be sacrificed on. So he was not a small child. He's somewhat grown, if not fully grown. I've seen some
I've seen some that say he was like as old as 30.
30, yeah. And Abraham was old AF. So like he didn't make Isaac get on this thing. And at some point Isaac says, Father, we don't have a calf. And Abraham's like, don't worry about that. Let's go. And they just keep going, right?
He's like,
And then they get up there, and we don't know the whole conversation, but at some point the boy lays himself on the wood, and he's accepting his fate. And then the angel of the Lord says, "Don't." And then all of a sudden they hear a noise and they turn around. There's a ram stuck in the thickets, and he's like, "Ah, a ram, sweet!" And they sacrifice the ram, and
whew.
they come back down. The men are like, "How'd it go? It went great. Let's go home." That's that's the story. But so anyway, that's what made me want to bring this up and just kind of talk about it for a little bit.
Hmm. All
Thoughts?
right.
What are you guys thinking?
Well, I have this book, bought it a few years ago. This was published in 1977. This is when the terminology entered like modern Christian academia and church discussion. Because of
A-
this guy's work.
Alan F.
Alan,
Don't call me
Se
Steven Seagal.
yeah, Seagal. Um, but
So did he coin the term, Brian?
he did not coin the term. He popularized it.
Okay.
The phrasing is actually taken from the anti-two powers rabbis.
Okay.
Like they characterized it. It's kind of a pejorative.
Hmm.
We use it
Now.
today. No, then it was a
Okay.
pejorative then. Like they were kind of, or at least it wasn't coined by friendly voices.
Got it.
It's kind of like today, if you characterize um, like somebody who believes that you can't lose your salvation, they'll call it the perseverance of the saints. But the people who are opposed to that idea will call it once saved, always saved, because it's kind of glib and
And
dismissive.
they'll also say it and they'll go, once saved, always saved. And then, then you have
Exactly. So
okay.
the rabbis were like two powers in heaven, pagans. So, and just in the interest of full disclosure, I got this a few years ago. I got this far.
So for the
Um,
listeners, it's halfway.
it's not even that. It's like the first like 20 pages. It was kind of boring.
It kind of looked
Um,
halfway.
well, don't worry about it.
Okay.
I'm like, this great content explaining my bookmark conventions, but it's kind of boring. Not because the content itself is boring. It's just the concepts I was already kind
Is
of
it
familiar with.
academic or is it like narrative?
I put it down so a while ago. I think if you're not familiar with the ideas, it's interesting. It's just that I have enough
You've been
familiarity with the
around the topic
concepts.
so much that
Yeah.
Brian's like, teach me something. Or
Now
Aikido me out of here. I don't know what.
I now in the interest of full disclosure, I was reluctant to do this topic because I have the book and I'm planning to read it, and I know that whatever I say, I'm gonna did you zoom in on yourself on purpose, or was that just
that's why I'm laughing. It just happened.
I know that when I read the book, I'm going to look back on this episode and think and kick myself because I'll get something wrong. Um, Not an expert in this. I'm sure there are nuances to all of this that I have yet to learn because I haven't read the book. But as kind of the broad strokes, I feel like I get, but take it with a grain of salt. I could be completely wrong after I read the book, but I doubt it, so I'm going to go with it. But so basically, like the idea of the two powers, um, it was always kind of in the mix in Second Temple Judaism. Um, it wasn't universally accepted, but it was an acceptable belief. Of course, when Christianity came along, and Alan Siegel kind of acknowledges this, that the advent of Christianity was kind of the catalyst for the rabbis to tighten to first to debate all of these things and to tighten their definition of monotheism to exclude this idea of a plurality within the Godhead. Um, Prior to that, it wasn't universally accepted, but it wasn't condemned as heresy. Post Christianity, when the rabbis hammer all this stuff out, they decide they decreed that it was. And their argument was, well, we'll get to that later. We should probably define the concept a little more before we start nailing down how they ironed out the argument. But do you want to kind of explain the concept, or
No, go
you
for it.
want me
I mean,
to?
I gave it a super high level, but feel free.
Um, yeah, so basically, the the concept as I see it in the Bible, the Torah spends, there you have the Shema, Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our God, uh, Yahweh alone is God. Um, they are strict monotheists. There's no gods besides him. There's only one God. Yet you have this second Yahweh appearing. Whenever God reveals himself visibly, audibly, on earth to humans, it's always as the angel of Yahweh, who often speaks of Yahweh in the third person. Um, and there was all kinds of discussion about why this was. Um, Basically, the understanding is that because God is outside of creation, he's eternal. He created all matter and energy, form and substance, light and sound, and every medium by which we can sense things. He's beyond them and can't be represented within them. So anytime God is appearing visibly to mortals, this isn't God in the absolute exhaustive sense, but um, I don't want to say an avatar, but it kind of the closest parallel would be an avatar. Um, like in Hinduism, you have like Vishnu appears in a series of avatars, the most famous being Krishna. Like there's an understanding that the avatar isn't Vishnu he's Vishnu, but he's not Vishnu in his fullness. He's more of a microcosm of this broader principle that defies easy representation. Except with God, it's not. Vishnu is a part of creation. He's the sustainer aspect of the Hindu Trimurti. But in Hinduism, generally speaking, they're pantheists. So the idea of a god manifesting as an avatar is it's a bit more normal and natural. Like everybody in a sense is an avatar of God because God is the universe is God. So we're all a part of God. So every individual person is an avatar to a lesser degree. In Christianity, though, it's God is completely outside of creation. And so he's transcendent. So God coming into creation is it's a wholly different thing than in Hinduism. It's a I can't overstate the crudeness of the analogy, but it's the kind of the most convenient. So, um, but yeah, you see this. There are several other passages where this is in view. The Ezekiel 1 is probably one of the more spectacular ones.
You think? I think Daniel 7 is the other big one for me, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's a Daniel 7 is pretty. Um, well, they demonstrate the same concept, but in I think in very different ways. Um, do you want to go through do you want to explain the
Yes, I mean
Daniel
just
7
just at
one?
a super high level. So Daniel 7 is the vision in heaven, and
Of the divine council?
it's rep yeah, good point. Nice callback.
Yeah.
And the representation is the Son of Man approaching the Ancient of Days, right? And so the implication is that Christ is approaching God or Yahweh or the Father. Um, and so you have this vision of the two parts of the Godhead in some version of physical manifestation, right? Obviously not earthly physical, but some type of spiritual body representation. And there's never any explanation given for it. It's just kind of just Daniel's given this vision, and then back to regular programming. So you have to do something with that. But that's Daniel 7. So Brian, go.
Yeah, and just to flesh that out, there are literary cues that first it establishes on no uncertain terms that the Ancient of Days is God.
Mhm.
He's holding court. He's attended by thousands upon thousands of holy ones.
Right.
This is clearly and undeniably God. But then in my vision, and I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man coming on the clouds of heaven, which is in ancient Near Eastern speak. This is a clear characteristic of divinity. Mortals don't ride on the clouds of heaven. This was in the ancient Near East. You have that language attributed to Baal and Marduk and other deities who were set up as rivals to Yahweh. To have one like a son of man coming on the clouds of heaven, clearly a deity in some sense, coming into the presence of the Ancient of Days and being given authority, glory, and sovereign power, and all peoples, nations, and men of every language worshiping him. I say that illustrates it in a different sense than Ezekiel 1, because as you mentioned, the Ancient of Days and the one like a son of man, they're pictured together. So you're kind of seeing them both kind of co-located. In Ezekiel 1, it describes this elaborate Ezekiel is by the river Kabar in Babylon, and he sees in the distance these storm clouds, and beneath them, and it seems to he seems to be describing something in the distance, but as you're reading it, like in at least as I read it didn't say this, but the way that he describes it in such graphic detail, it's almost like it's coming at you, it's coming closer, and he's so in awe of what he's seeing that it's like it just rushed up on him, and he describes these four wheels corresponding with these four I'm not going to get into all the imagery, but it's recognizable ancient Near Eastern divine throne imagery.
It's
Like a lot of
spaceships.
people,
It's
yeah, a lot of people
aliens.
read it that way, but because we're kind of projecting our modern ideas onto it. To an ancient Near Eastern reader, it was recognizable symbolism, but the climax is near the end of the chapter. Hold on, I lost it. It's very unprofessional. I apologize. So the um describes a figure seated on the throne. Above the vault over their heads was what looked like a throne of lapis lazuli, and high above the throne was a figure like that of a man. I saw that from what appeared to be his waist up, he looked like glowing metal, as if full of fire, and that from there down he looked like fire, and brilliant light surrounded him like the appearance of a rainbow in the clouds on a rainy day. So was the radiance around him. So there is this blazing, glorious figure seated on a throne. And then he says, this was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of Yahweh. When I saw it, I fell face down, and I heard the voice of one speaking, and then God speaks to him. But that part at the end, um, he doesn't just say this was Yahweh. He doesn't just say this was the glory of Yahweh. There are multiple layers of qualification. It's the appearance of the likeness of the glory of Yahweh. He definitely saw Yahweh. He saw God in the form of a man seated on a throne. But the way that he describes it with these layers of qualification, he can't just say this is Yahweh. It has to be qualified, because the Yahweh that you can see is not Yahweh in his fullness. He always has to um he always has to interact with mortals as the second person. And I assume as he's interacting with heavenly beings, it's as the second person. But I don't know. I don't know if any mortal can claim to know that, but it seems that they're also created beings and have senses like ours. But anyway, um, that's one of the major passages that kind of lends itself to the two powers in heaven idea that Ezekiel doesn't just say, "I saw Yahweh."
Hmm.
Um, it's the appearance of the likeness of the glory of Yahweh. And Philo of Alexandria, he was a Hellenistic Jew um, living in Alexandria, Egypt, roughly corresponding with the time of Jesus. I think he outlived him by a couple decades.
Not being
Um,
crucified helps.
yeah. Um, well, I guess I think he didn't outlive him by a couple
The
decades.
first time.
He his mortal life
Yeah.
extended a bit
Yeah.
beyond
Yeah.
Jesus's. But he wrote a lot about he a lot of his work was in kind of synchronizing Judaism with Greek philosophy, Platonism. A lot of logos theology of Christianity comes from Philo. The logos means that's the word in John. In the beginning was the logos, and the logos was with God, and the logos was God. Um, that was a technical term in Greek philosophy before it was showed up in the New Testament. And Philo made a lot out of this, and it was understood as the divine rational principle by which the universe exists and operates. um, Philo saw it as the reason of God and as kind of an intermediary between God and man. He described it as a high priest, um, God's spokesman, the voice of God. But it's kind of the same concept that you find illustrated in narrative in places like Ezekiel 1 and the in Genesis 22. Um, so so yeah, that's the basically the
Yeah.
concept of it.
Dre, any thoughts on this? I know you, when you do the research as you're building the questions, you tend to start looking at things differently. Do you have any more
No,
thoughts?
I think you guys hit it. I think yeah, those were my examples. Because I think those are ones that are pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, straightforward enough that they cause you to go, wait, what?
Right,
Okay.
right. I guess just as a layman, like, all right, so we claim that God is outside and has all these powers and capable of doing all these things and all this stuff because he created us all. One. Why does it have to be two powers? Why can't he just come down? Right? Like why can't he just like I don't know for lack of
Why can't
words
he
to
nerf
describe
himself enough that he could just
right.
walk around and not kill us
Just
with his presence?
right. Like, why is he why is there two powers in heaven?
I,
Why this language?
I mean, that's there's probably an entire opportunity for an entire path of theology to address that question,
Right.
right? It, I think my if I was just gonna, gun to my head, answer your question, just off the cuff, the the starting position would be, well, he could, right?
Right.
Because then you're getting into, can God make a rock so heavy he can't lift
Right.
it,
Right.
all that kind of stuff, right? And I don't think there's a lot of value in that. I think my thought process is that um, whatever or whenever he decided on this Godhead, we'll call it Trinity for for just to put a name on it, and then he ordered creation around his existence and his nature that he created, right? Like he's like, this is how I'm going to present myself, and so that way I don't have to nerf my my first form or top level, or however you want to think
Right.
about the and I'm sure I just committed four heresies by just saying that phrase. um but he's like, I can create a universe where the second part of me can move freely about the country. And then this other part of me will just stay put here, and then that way this works.
But why does he have
I
to
mean,
stay put there? Like, does like the universe fall apart if he doesn't stay there? Like, I don't. Like, what is?
because he
Well, but
is.
I think that's like asking like why can't the number three be less than the number two?
Just because it is.
Like it's just a
Yeah.
logical consequence of the fact that he is eternal and self-existent and the universe is created and contingent. Um, like why can't he just enter the universe? Well, he can. Um, that's that's the second Yahweh. That's the second person of the um
Right. That's kind of
so
what I
Yeah, I
was.
mean, I get it. I
Yeah.
just don't. I don't know why that has to be the second. I don't know why
Well,
it's just him.
but it is just him though. Like
Right.
that's like
Right.
that's getting into like, is Jesus less God than the Father's God? Like they're both God. So it's not less, it's just different. And there's no
I
limitation
think
based
I
on
think
that.
that some would say that he is less, which is why there's the whole argument that he's not God.
Well, some would say
well
that, but then those some would be non-Trinitarian.
Sure,
well the
100%.
the question is like I would say that I would say the Son is I'm being very careful here. Um,
Heresy warning.
Jesus did say the Father is greater than I.
He did say that.
Jesus is in a sense less than the Father without him being less than fully God. But it's the question is like does that make Jesus less than God or a created being? The Arian position being that he's a created divine being by God. The question is the second person necessary to the Father's existence, or
No.
is he, or is um, would you say
I said no.
what?
He's
Why
not
wouldn't he be?
necessary. There's nothing necessary for the Father's existence.
Well, I would say that yes, the second person is necessary to the Father's existence. Not that the Father is contingent upon the Son, but the Son exists as a necessary entailment of the Father's existence.
I would say I would offer that
So he's necessary for us.
I would offer that you're using the wrong word, and it's not that he's necessary, he's purposeful.
Well, so you're saying that the Father just chose for the Son to exist when he could have chosen otherwise.
I think so.
I see. I don't think so. I mean, the 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 scripture is very clear that the Son is eternal. He's co-eternal with the Father. The Holy Spirit is co-eternal with the Father and the Son. I think the explanation that I use in this
Just in your head canon and the way you try to like build it around in your own.
well, and I wrote a blog article about it probably 10 or 11 years ago, and I kind of put it out there so it could be picked apart. I don't know how wide. I mean, it's gotten a lot of views. I don't know that it's been put before. Maybe I'll try to get it published in
That'd be
a
a cool
or
idea.
put it before somebody who's competent to evaluate it. But so far, I've spread it as far and wide as I could, and no one's been able to tell me why I'm wrong. But the analogy that I use is to human consciousness. Um, as humans, we are as humans made in the image of God, I should say, we are self-aware. We have awareness of ourselves as selves. So we have a self-image. Um, but our there's a and I actually got this occurred to me studying Hinduism of all things, the Hindu Upanishads. In the Upanishads, there's this explanation that the self is there. It kind of probes the distinction between the thinker and the thoughts that you think. Are you the thoughts that you think about yourself, or are those distinct from the thinker? The Hindu explanation is that, well, yeah, the thoughts are your ego, or what they say, your jiva, whereas the true self is the Atman. Um, but you can't really see yourself. Whatever self-image you have, whatever you could say about yourself, it's not really about yourself. It's about your external circumstances or where you've been or experiences you've had. It's always things external to you. And so, which kind of sharpens the difference between the self-image and the self. So the self-image is largely kind of an inflated, um, inaccurate version of the self where you gloss over your faults and inflate your virtues, and it's never quite identical with the self. The Hindu idea of salvation, that in Hindu thinking, the self is identical to Brahman, to God. And so the objective of Hindu salvation is to destroy the illusion of individual identity by destroying the ego, and then you realize your oneness with Atman, I mean with Brahman. I totally reject that, but I accept this. I accept the distinction between the thinker and the thoughts that you think about yourself. Every person has a self and a self-image. God, by virtue of also being a conscious being, he also has an awareness of himself as a self, and he has had this awareness of himself as a self eternally, as a necessary fact of his existence. To exist as God is to have this self-awareness. Unlike us, though, he is omniscient. He's morally perfect. This his conception of himself lacks absolutely nothing of himself. It is every bit him as he is, but is a distinct awareness of himself. Um,
I'm going to issue a drinking challenge to our listeners to take a drink every time you said the word self in this, and
well, that's
they will all be dead. And I'm just saying, like, that's a complicated, like, that's a whole like sub show, like what you're going into. That's really hard to follow, is my point.
well, I got a blog article about it. I'm sure
Yeah.
everybody's chomping at the bit to read it
Well,
now.
no, I
But
mean it's I find this interesting in all seriousness, but that's really hard to follow. And I'm only stopping you just because like I think I get the high level.
yeah,
You're saying the shortcomings of this concept don't apply, but the rest of it still does because it's just kind of the way.
yeah, you don't have to believe anything about Hinduism
Right.
to accept the basic concept. It just so happened that Hindus were the first to, or at least first recorded to probe the interior dimensions
Right.
of the human psyche and come up with this stuff. And they did it within a pantheistic worldview, and so they came to some bad conclusions. But the concept is sound. So yeah, if as a necessary fact of God's existence, he has an awareness of himself that lacks no attribute of God himself. Um, so yeah, the Son is eternal and necessary to God's being. Why is that funny?
Because all the things you said had nothing to do with the Son. You're just like, because the self and then the self and then God's self. So then the self of the self. So anyway, the Son's eternal. Like
God's
I
God's self-image is the Son.
yeah,
Like
I don't think that doesn't make sense to me.
well, I mean,
Because I mean, if
I
that's the
could
self-image,
explain
then
it.
what's the spirit?
The spirit is the mutual self-image between the Father and the Son. I explain that in the blog too. But the bottom line is that the Son, the second person of the Trinity, is eternal. Um, he is a each is fully God in their own right, but the Father by existing begets the Son. You couldn't say he creates the Son because the Son is an aspect of his own being, but a distinct person from the Father.
I really didn't want this conversation to turn into another Trinity uh, philosophy thing.
It's kind of hard to avoid if I mean,
Not really. Well,
well,
obviously it is for us, but it didn't have to be.
maybe you have a better answer to Dre's question then. That's what I got.
Yeah, I
So,
mean that
Dre,
question
did that answer
is
your question?
sure. Yeah, I mean, the to me is like, why? Be, because we like you. Like, I don't know. I just if there's a break between Judaism and Christianity over the second power,
Mhm.
it's because Christianity makes a bold claim that
Yes.
says that those
I mean,
tensions are
that's
that
the
the
simple
tensions are
part.
not contradictions. They are like signposts of what's to come. That is God, and He will be here soon. And here's all the things that they kind of light the way to that. So if that's not God, because who who are these second powers according to Judaism?
um,
And I want to steel man, and I want to be fair
yeah.
to our Jewish friends here. Like, what if that's not, a second power,
If the angel
or
of the
or
Lord
or
isn't
or Jesus,
Christ,
or
yeah.
whatever we want to say, yeah, Christ, then who is it? What do they say it
Um,
is?
and also in the interest of fairness to our Jewish friends, this debate did not happen because of they decided the conclusion to the debate because of Christianity, but the debate was ongoing in Jesus's time. And you can kind of see that in the Gospels when he brings up um, his last week in before he's crucified. They're kind of uh, battering him with questions and testing him, and then at the conclusion, he tests them and he says, what do you say about the Messiah? Whose son is he? And they say, well, he's the son of David. And then he quotes, well, then, Psalm 110, Yahweh said to my Adonai, said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. If David calls him Lord, how then can he be his son? And so Jesus is telling us that the Messiah is God, is divine. He's not merely the son of David, but he is David's superior because he's his God. Um, but apparently that wasn't universally accepted because Jesus had to challenge them with that and raise that point of debate. But to your question, Dre, the position the rabbis landed on was that all of these the angel of Yahweh and the Son of Man. They were and the well, I don't know what they say about the figure in Ezekiel 1. But but all the other places where the angel of Yahweh is spoken of as God, but he refers to God in the third person. Well, that they argue he's not really God. He's God's representative. He's acting
He's a regent, right? He's like, hey, I got the flag of God, which means whatever I say, that's what God is saying. So you better listen to
pretty
me, because
much,
that's
yeah.
like
Right.
saying,
It's Lord in the old
right.
English sense, not in the biblical Christian sense.
So the scandal isn't that, you know, Christians recognized that there were other, beings or something foreign. They didn't invent something foreign to the Hebrew Bible. That the scandal is that they gave it a name.
Well, the scandal is that accepting Jesus meant they saw it as a threat to their identity as God's chosen people. They thought it should be something exclusive to them. Um, they invented the theological objections. I mean, the debate was there, but somebody who didn't accept that side of it, who rejected the idea of the two powers, they still accepted the people who believed in the two powers as legitimate Jews. They didn't call them heretics and accuse them of polytheism. So this was this idea of the plurality within the Godhead was perfectly acceptable, albeit not universally embraced. With Christianity, um, yeah, they didn't reject Christianity because of un-Jewish theology. They declared the theology un-Jewish in order to justify their rejection of Christianity. So I
Yeah,
think
I agree. That
Yeah.
to me, which is kind of like the whole, like my whole, all my questions were that, right? Like, what what's your problem, bro? And and there's the scandal.
Well, it's to me, it strikes me that the idea of the Godhead was already there, right? Dre, you mentioned that the roads, the street, the lampposts, they were already there. And then when Jesus declared his position or his person, he didn't invent a concept. He just
Right.
went a step further. And he said, remember that whole son of man thing? Yeah, that's that other thing that you guys have been talking about and accepting all along. And then they were like, wait, what? No. Right?
well,
Like,
in truth, he
We
didn't.
we weren't ready.
All the stuff that Jesus said about the Son of Man, he was quoting the Book of Enoch, which
mhm.
was, of course, not canonical to the Jews, but it still loomed largely enough that it was a common point of reference.
Well, and Daniel.
Well, yeah, but the portion from Enoch, the book of parables, which is book two of Enoch. Book one, the book of the Watchers. It's all about the Mount Hermon and the flood and Enoch's tour of heaven and Sheol. Book two is the book of parables, and it basically takes that language from Daniel 7. It takes all of these data points from the Old Testament about the Messiah and creates this composite figure for what they expected the Messiah to be.
Mhm.
You know,
And
I saw a thing on the Book of Enoch and a pretty cool comparison. Like our U.S. Constitution is canonical, but the Federalist Papers that kind of backs that up and what the founders were thinking. And though it's not instituted and we don't make laws off the Federalist Papers, but
that's a
that's the
very
Book
good
of Enoch.
analogy. Yeah,
That's
Because
Enoch. We
you,
know
you
what
you
the
know that
time
I
was.
know that you know
Right.
yeah.
that they
That's
had
that
this in the back of their
that
minds as they were saying and doing things.
right.
So the Federalist Papers are great things to quote because when you're talking about the Constitution and you know one of the amendments and you're like, hey, our founders were they framed it in this manner. So to just see, you know, a passage in the Bible and understand how it was actually framed and referenced by the ancient Near Easterners, then that's pretty cool to have a book like Enoch to reference.
Yeah. So in Enoch, in the book of parables, the Son of Man, he is explicitly identified throughout as God, as divine. You have the same imagery from Daniel 7. He's in the presence of the Ancient of Days. He's called the Ancient of Days, elect one. He is it's very explicit. He's talking about the Messiah, the coming Messiah. He is a divine figure. Um, it talks about him being worshipped and so any in the Gospels, whenever Jesus is talking about when the Son of Man comes in the glory of the Father with all of his holy ones, he is directly quoting the Book of Enoch. Um, so like the Messiah, and again, it's not canonical. It was debated whether or not that was true, but the idea of the Messiah being God, worthy of worship, being God's representative, the face of God, the identity of God on earth, that was 1,000% nailed down in place before Jesus was born. He was only citing it. He was only proving himself to be that. But yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's a really good analogy, Trey. I like that a lot. But I got to remember that.
I agree.
So if we were to do a deeper dive on this topic, I mean, obviously we got to read Steven Seagal's book, or whoever that guy is. I don't want to disrespect him. He's probably not fat and gross like Steven Seagal.
He's
I hope he
probably
has a
not.
ponytail though.
No,
He's probably not a big lying fake either.
right, right. Um, where we go? Where we go with this conversation? Where can
Um,
it go?
Well, I mean, I think
Because this is kind of a high level. This is an
yeah. No, yeah,
introduction.
this is like we're kind of introing the idea to ourselves as much as to
Right.
the listeners, right? Like
The audience is like,
this was
why you guys just
admittedly
spitballing
something
over here?
that we've talked about, and we'll talk about it again. And I became aware of this concept because of Michael Heiser, because he refers to it a fair bit. But then again, like with all of the things that we've been talking about and learning, especially DCW related, once you know about it, it keeps popping up, right? Like you keep seeing it, and you keep, like, it happened to me. I'm just casually translating Hebrew as one does, and I'm like, oh shit, two powers, right? Like, um, so I mean, I guess reading, going through that book's probably important. I think it would be really good to, to understand what this, the convention of conversation from the Jewish point of view is, right? Like,
Right.
how do they wave this away?
Right.
I'm really interested to go kind of hear that and hear how they, well, explain to me, what would this angel mean when it said to me? Is it either God or is it not God? Like, does it speak for God or does it not speak for God? Like, and speaking for God does not. I've never known of a messenger speaking for a king that just talks about, and I'm going to do this. It's like, wait, you're not the king. Like, you got to go report back to the king and then get more information. Um, it's kind
Well,
of, I guess the only similarity I would put to this is like, dependents in the military thinking they have their husband's rank. Like, I guess that might be the closest, to how one might
Cute.
hand wave this away. But like that's an important part of this. But I would challenge all the listeners to go, go hit
But is that the Jewish argument, or are they, or is some of their interpreters just say that Jesus isn't that?
Well, of course they say that. That's what they
Well,
they
right,
they
but
land on that. But then if they from what I understand and the little bit that I read from the Jewish point of view is they vehemently reject the idea of God being in two places at once. It's complex. And you get a lot of, well, you got to understand, you get a lot of that. You don't get a direct answer like, well, what did he mean right here when, explain Genesis 22? Like,
yeah, they basically just trump those passages by going back to first principle, what they consider to be first principles of there is only one God, and there is like, and I don't want to dismiss their position too lightly, because I think this concept means more when you approach it from that insistence in the Torah that you saw no voice of any kind when the voice came to you out of the fire.
right.
Therefore, you shall not make an idol for yourself in anything from heaven above or the earth beneath or waters below to worship it or bow down to it. There absolutely no image, no form could ever be used to represent God because God is totally transcendent of creation.
Exactly. So why would you listen to the angel of the Lord that he said is that other, because that would become an idol or something other than God.
Um, I know from personal experience, like, and I'm sure this is common when I'm considering things like that, how God is wholly transcendent, and I'm praying to him, and I'm trying to kind of consider the one that I'm talking to, and I find him totally unreachable. I can't relate because he is so transcendent. I feel like I'm just speaking out into nowhere. Um, thinking of him as as the father of Jesus Christ. You get lost trying to pray to God in terms of what he is, because he is so utterly transcendent. Um, the angel of Yahweh and then Jesus himself are who God is. Um, we can't relate to him unless he comes to us on terms that we can relate to. He's beyond our reach. There's this great quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer in his Letters and Papers in Prison. You don't know, he was the German pastor who was arrested for he kind of led the underground Christians in Nazi Germany. He was arrested for his involvement in a failed plot to assassinate Hitler. He was hung a matter of weeks before the war ended, but he wrote he wrote a lot of letters and papers from prison, hence the name of the book. A quote from it: "It is only when one knows the unutterability of the name of God that one can utter the name of Jesus Christ. It is only when one loves life and the earth so much that without them everything seems to be over, that one may believe in the resurrection and a new world. It is only when one submits to God's law that one may speak of grace, and it is only when God's wrath and vengeance are hanging as grim realities over the heads of one's enemies that something of what it means to love and forgive them can touch our hearts." Um, so basically, the gospel is it's the resolution of seeming contradictions. God is totally unknowable and unreachable. Nothing in creation can represent him. He comes to us as Jesus Christ. His his holiness and justice are perfect, that no sin can go unpunished, but he loves us and is merciful. Those meet at the cross. Those are reconciled. Um, so like I don't so like the Jews are correct to acknowledge the tension of the incarnation and of the two powers with those principles of God's transcendence and being beyond representation within creation. Um, but it's not, but those aren't contradictions. It's a paradox, but um, so yeah, but
Yeah, you just triggered a thought. So our in church, we started this week, yesterday, 2 days. What day is today? Monday? Yeah, yesterday. We started yesterday a new series where we're going chunk by chunk. We're actually decomposing the Lord's Prayer, which is kind of a cool exercise to do.
I mean, deconstructing,
Deconstructing, yeah, whatever.
Decomposing.
decomposing it.
Gross.
It's been around for a long
We're
time.
we're
Yeah,
turning it we're turning it into compost.
yeah,
Yeah, we're deconstructing it,
that would
and
fertilize everything.
we're in the first chunk of it, right? Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. That's what we spent the whole sermon on that. And one of the points that my pastor was making is that we gloss over so many parts of the Lord's Prayer, and we just say words. Our Father who art in heaven. Well, that part's easy, right? You're in heaven. That's where you are. But what does hallowed be thy name mean, right? So we spent an entire hour on hallowing him, right? And what is hallowing and all of that. And it was funny, Brian, because it made me think of your teddy bear theology came up in my mind during the sermon. But at the same time, you won't like this part. You're like, oh, Matt thought of one of my concepts during church. You're going to hate that. Right behind that, I was thinking of um, Andrew Tate and his interview with Candace Owen. Uh, because in that interview, Andrew had recently converted to Islam, and Candace asked him why. And he said, I looked around and Muslims are the only people that actually fear their God the way that they should based on their belief system. Christians don't seem to fear their God, but Muslims really fear Allah. And he said, I want to serve a God that's worthy of that and that's that important and that big. And it was a really powerful thing when he said that. I remember watching
I remember when
Candace
he said
be
it.
like, Candace was like, wow, and you're not wrong. right? Like it was really interesting.
That is, I mean, I agree. It is a very good criticism of Christians,
Yeah.
a very stupid criticism of Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get the
yeah,
nuance
yeah,
on what
for
you,
sure.
100%. Yeah. But it was all related to what he was saying, what my pastor was saying on yesterday. And it's something that has been in the back of my mind for a long time. And I've mentioned it on here before, but it came up. So I felt like saying it again. Um, we all go through, man, I can't believe this. And I can't believe I've been doing this or thinking that or saying this. Um, you know, uh, Obviously in Christians, blasphemy is a sin. It's something we try to avoid and it's looked down upon, etc. um Something that's really bothered me is the way that Christians and just English speakers, but Christians specifically, have minimized the word holy. We say holy crap, holy guacamole, like
Sacred
everything's
feces.
everything's holy, right?
I
And some listeners like, Matt, come on, dude, you're so pious now that you don't know. Like, holy is a really special word because it's the only word in the Bible that is used to accurately describe God. It's the only word. That's the purpose of the word. Nothing else is holy. And
So talk about nerfing.
yeah, yeah. And when we walk around making everything holy this, holy that, holy hijinks, Batman, right? Like we're minimizing the only thing that we have in our vocabulary to recognize the greatness of God. And anybody that is questioning that, here's a Jeopardy trivia thing for you. What is the only so in Hebrew? Here we go. Matt being the new Hebrew nerd. There's a specific thing in the Hebrew language when they string a word together twice. And when they do that, it's to put super emphasis on that word. And
Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh.
the way they'll do it is they'll say, like, let's say I was punching a guy really hard. They will say, punching, Matt
Going
punched.
bam,
Yeah.
bam with
Yeah.
each.
Yeah. But that the Hebrew will string the word together twice. And they say it the first time in the perfect sense with ing, and they're doing it to get your attention. Something's really about to get punched. And then they punched. Well, when the angels were worshiping God, they called him holy, holy, holy. And it's the only time in the Bible that a word is strung together 3 times. And it's that word. It happens twice. Once is a reference to the time that it happened. So it's once in Revelations and once in
Isaiah 6.
Thank you. And the one in Revelations is pointing back to the Isaiah 6 event, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's the other way around, but one was in real time during the vision or whatever, and the other was that in hindsight. But that's the only time it happens in the Bible. It's the only time, to my knowledge, in Hebrew that they strung a word together 3 times, and that's like really, really, really meaningful. So anyway, I don't know what that had to do with anything, but I felt like sharing that. It's been on my heart a lot lately, and I still catch myself doing. I go, holy crap! And I'm like, really,
Well,
Matt? The
I
crap
think
is
it's
holy.
relevant to the idea of like God the Father is transcendent of creation. I mean, holy means set apart,
Right.
and calling God holy, holy, holy speaks to his
The level
utter
to which his set
transcendence.
apartness is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but
I
yeah,
think
I love. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dre.
I think the way you framed your prayer and how you think of God actually answers my question from earlier. Like why the avatar? Why can't he? Why is he? Because we can't relate to what that is. To who he is, we don't know. And we can't know.
Yeah.
So he has to use tools to show us. And it's really tough to relate something that you have no concept of, but you can conceive of a dude that talked to people,
Yeah.
that said wise things,
Yeah.
that
Exactly.
that gave you warnings, that somebody that forgave you, somebody that sacrificed themselves for you. He's an actual hero. Like
Yeah,
you
and
you
we
have you
don't.
have all the heroes in ancient times, right? The Greek mythology, but this guy was a hero for you and you and you and you and you.
Yeah, and we can't worship God for what he is
Right.
because we can't conceive of that. Um, we can only worship him for who he is.
Which means we also can't be afraid of what he is,
Not properly.
right? So you need an angel of the Lord to come and strike fear into you.
And also to
We,
tell you, be not afraid.
right.
Because he's so terrified when he shows up, you're like,
Like, yo, what? So that whole concept makes sense. He
oh
needs
my
to appear and be like,
God.
hey, no, look at me.
Yeah.
This town's done.
That
Two,
makes me think of a show topic I want to run by you guys
okay,
after this.
real quick. So I got two parting thoughts, and then I'm tapped out on this. One is the other thing I forgot to mention that struck me about the story of Abraham and Isaac and the sacrifice that didn't happen, or actually the sacrifice, but when it wasn't Isaac. I never noticed before. I find I'm reading the Bible differently when I'm translating it because I'm literally chugging through it word by
I bet
word.
it's pretty cool.
It's neat. It's tedious,
It
but
sounds taxing.
it is, but I'm finding like a comfort in it. Like I actually had a moment when I was like, they're like, here's another verse. And I'm like, why is this verse so long? Right. Because I'm just trying to like typical
Yeah.
person just trying to get done. Um, and then I stopped and I was like, Matt, you've never read the Bible this thoroughly before. This is actually kind of neat. You need to just sit back and embrace this and just like enjoy the time because you're only going to translate the Bible once. After you've done it once, then you're just reading it again. So there's only going to be one time of me chugging through these words and like, what is this word? Ata? Like what? Then I got to go look it up and go to Strong's and pull out my dictionary or whatever, right? Um, I never noticed the symbology in how Abraham was being asked to sacrifice his only son.
Hmm.
That hit me like a ton of bricks.
On the mountain of Yahweh, it will be provided.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's literally what the angel of the Lord says to him.
The
Now
angel of
Yeah,
the
that
Lord's
you've
like, now
proven
hold that thought.
to to
exactly.
to prophecy about God
Yes.
giving his only
Yeah.
son.
And I that never registered with me before. It was always
Isaac carrying the wood,
mhm. Yeah, Jesus carrying his
Jesus
own
carrying his
cross.
cross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's right there. And yet, the Jews are going to be like, "Nah, you're just reading into it." No, I'm just
And I
reading it.
mean, what's crazy too is that that's a that's a Sunday school story. That's something we tell
And they
kids.
miss all the meat.
And there's no right.
Yeah.
It's just hey, that's an obedient guy right there.
I guys, so this Sunday I was in the band this Sunday and we were doing our run through and the youth minister was gonna do the guest. So we have a different pastor host depending on who's giving the actual sermon. That way more pastors are involved. And the young man, his name's Asher, he's a good kid. And they called him up and he's like, well, I know I was initially going to preach, I was going to do my opening a verse from Matthew, but because we're so focused on who is God and hallowing his name and being a little heavier, he goes, I decided to use Psalm 22. And I was like, hey, let's go, Psalm 22. And he looks at me and kind of winked. And then when he did it in the sermon, he actually led with, this is Psalm 22. Some of you might not be familiar with it, but it starts with our Father, why have you forsaken me? This is, the verse that Christ was referencing when he was on the cross. And I'm like, this is the first time that I've heard any person stand on a stage and actually preach that. And it took a youth pastor to do it. And probably nobody noticed it in the service that didn't already understand that linkage. And it's funny. So I said I had one more thought, and I'm kind of vomiting now, and I'm sorry. Uh, so I had my first chapter of Hebrew that wasn't just learning words, and it was Intro to the Hebrew Bible. So now I'm like learning how to read the footnotes in the Bible, and it looks like this. By the way, it's terrible. So this is the actual Bible, and then they have footnotes over here, and then more footnotes down here, which is interesting. And it's from the Masoretes, and all of the analysis that they did to kind of flesh out the Bible. I'm not going to get into all that, but what's interesting is the table of contents, or the Bible, like how the names of the books of the Bible are. I don't know if anybody knows this out there listening, but the Hebrews, the Jews do not call their books of the Bible the same names that we call them. And it's not because it's a translation difference. They don't actually have names for some of the books of the Bible. It's literally the first two or three words in the book, because that's how they referenced things. Everything was from memorization. So anybody that's heard me talk about Psalm 22 and that's what Jesus was quoting, like if you doubt that, like their names of the books of the Tanakh aren't even like the way we do it. Like some of them match, but they're not all the same. And I had a note to go over that, but I don't know where I put it. But yeah, like a handful of them, it's just the first one or two words in the book, and
It's
that's the
like
name of it.
my Apple's note page.
Yeah,
I don't label it, but it's the first
exactly.
few words, and that's how
Exactly.
I go back and like, oh, that's right. I was
Or if
I
you're
was my
doing
grocery
Microsoft Word,
list.
does it too. If you
Right,
start
right.
typing a Microsoft Word document and then you go to hit save, it's like, well, this is the first sentence you wrote, and you're like, no, it's this, blah blah. Yeah, but that's how they did it. Like the actual Bible is labeled that way. That's how they reference things. So anyway, I thought that was
Well, yeah.
interesting.
And by that same token, in the New Testament, when they quote a verse, they're not just quoting that verse. They're calling the whole passage
The
to mind.
entirety of that
Yeah.
into, yeah, exactly right. And again, we've talked about this. It's the same way, like we'll be casually, Dre and I just a minute ago went aha,
Yeah,
and we're very clear that we were referencing the joke at the end of Coming to America. Like we know what we're referencing. It's the joke about, hey, come here and taste my soup. What is it, too hot? No, you guys have seen the
right.
movie, you know what we're talking about. But us just going, aha, we were referencing that entire skit, and then we laughed because
Yeah.
it was funny to us because we went, aha, like that's the same thing we're talking about here, and I think that's lost a lot. Jesus did it like literally every time he gave a sermon. There's three, or probably in every sermon, there's at least three references that he was making, and it was not lost on the people he was
It's
talking.
almost every time he opens his mouth, like especially
Yeah,
when he's challenged.
yeah,
He's like, "Oh, you want to challenge me? Well, you remember this, right?
yeah.
No? Oh, you don't remember
What about the man in the duck? What
that?
about the guy in the boat?
Right,
What about the
right.
three astronauts and the rooster? Like, and
Which,
he just
wait,
does
right,
that, and he's like, boom, boom, bing, boom, and they're like, ah, and in their minds, they're playing chess when he's doing that, because they're like, oh, I see you opened with the Albanian offense. I'm going to counter with the Croatian two step. Like that's
right,
like
yeah.
what they were doing as they were doing
They're
their
like looking
battle of
through
the
their
wits.
Yu-Gi-Oh war deck. They're like, how do we put this down here? They're playing Magic the Gathering right now. Like,
They
yeah.
were with the Tanakh.
So did we
I think
solve
we
the
got
two?
I think we got nerdy right there, but
I,
it's
I want to read this one part.
Wait,
It's relevant.
I've got one verse I want to throw out real quick. This
No,
is way
no.
quicker. So you brought it up. You mentioned the Psalm 110, when David was talking about his Lord and Lord, so Adonai and Yahweh.
Yeah.
The fourth verse, go back to all of this pre-incarnation world council stuff. I'm reading out of the interlinear, so give me a second if I get my orders bad. Uh, has Yahweh not sworn that he will not? Has Yahweh sworn that he will not change his mind? For you are forever a priest according to the order of Melchizedek. I just had to make sure that was in there for lodged in
Yeah.
there for.
I'm glad
for
I'm glad you pronounced it correctly ish.
I mean, I do it differently every time I say it on purpose, just because I found that it now aggravates you.
Yeah. So Zechariah 12, this is a pretty good kind of proof text. It's about the end times. The Lord will save the dwellings of Judah first. So Jerusalem is surrounded by by the armies of the nations. They're under siege. The Lord will save the dwellings of Judah first, so that the honor of the house of David and of Jerusalem's inhabitants may not be greater than that of Judah. On that day, Yahweh will shield those who live in Jerusalem, so that the feeblest among them will be like David, and the house of David will be like God, like the angel of Yahweh going before them. On that day, I will set out to destroy all the nations that attack Jerusalem, and I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication. They will look on me, the one they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and grieve bitterly for him as one grieves for a firstborn son. On that day, the weeping in Jerusalem will be great as the weeping of Hadad Rimmon in the plain of Megiddo, and talks about the mourning of all of the people by clan and house, and um, it's uh, it's it's pretty powerful. Like you're seeing, this is God Himself declaring the moment when the Jews acknowledge Jesus as the Messiah. Speaking in the first person,
First and third,
immediately,
all at once.
yeah. They will look on me, the one they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only son.
Mm.
Um, I've
So stick that in your heart pocket.
I was in when I was in Jerusalem, I asked some Jews that I was debating this with about that verse, and I was told um, they're not allowed to read verses like that without their rabbi's supervision, and they can't listen to anything I have to say about it because I'm not a Jew and I don't have a Jewish soul. So I don't have any credibility or capacity to understand spiritual things. So they just don't deal with it. They like
Which was
it's
a polite way of calling you an animal, which is what their belief is, not having a
well,
soul for spiritual things.
to to be fair, to steel man them, the every Gentile has a soul. Of course, they're using the term soul in a Platonic pagan way, which is funny, not in a biblical way, but
It's funny,
we don't,
haha.
yeah,
Bloody
um,
queer.
we don't have souls. We are souls, but according to the Talmud, that which has adopted this Hellenistic Platonic idea of a soul, um, all humans have souls, but Jews have the same souls as everybody else, but they have an extra Jewish soul that gives them their capacity for spiritual
Yes, we know
things.
about the soul, but what about the second soul?
What do
Yeah.
they have, like duality of souls? Come on now.
And so powerful is the Jewish soul in enabling comprehension of spiritual things, according to the Talmud, that if a rabbi gets into a theological debate with God, the rabbi will win.
That is so beyond absurd.
It's in the Talmud.
Did you guys watch the video? I'll take it offline. I don't want to talk about it on the show because
Okay.
we'll talk about
Yeah,
a
so did
video on
we
the show.
solve the two powers in heaven?
I
I
mean,
don't
we
think we solved it.
certainly teased it out,
I think we introed it.
All right. I'll
and
have to
all the
finish the
listeners should go
book.
read these things.
Yeah,
I'll put these 4 or 5 main verses in the comments so they're easy to find. The
And we'll
Zechariah and the Psalm 110, Daniel 7, Exodus 3, Genesis 22. I'll throw those in the thing. Brian, did I miss one? I think you had an Ezekiel one. Which one
Ezekiel
is that one?
1. I mean, there's a ton in there. As
yeah, there's so many.
Ezekiel 1.
Yes,
Yeah,
Ezekiel 1.
Exodus 23 is another big one.
Okay.
Um, I'm sure everybody is on the edge of their seat to read my blog about the Trinity.
Oh yeah, completely.
Yep. But yeah,
All right.
that's
Well,
that's that's it.
in that case, and especially if you made it to here, we're gonna really need you to stay enlightened and for sure stay curious. We're gonna see you next week, and God bless. Take care.